Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. Let your voice shine. You have landed at the Her Voice Shines podcast. I am your fabulous host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from the real hot for holiday season in Houston, Texas. It's like 85 degrees up there, y'all. It's really, really crazy. Hopefully when we're seeing this, we'll have a boast of cool weather that makes it really feel like winter, but that's neither here nor there. I'm so happy to be here today because we have another great guest, and this has been an awesome week of podcasting. I always say each segment, each level, my podcast reach new heights because we're having conversations that are just that good. So without any further waiting time, let's have our beautiful guest come to the stage and do our normal drill. Tell us her name, where she's streaming from, and get the magic of that story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very beautiful guest for today.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Kelly White, and I am streaming from Narragansett, Rhode Island. We are very much feeling the Christmas weather up here. It is quite chilly. I guess I will say that my story began in 2012. It was a Friday in November. I was at work, working on climbing the corporate ladder. I was in an all-day training, and I had shut my phone off. And my boss came to get me out of that training because my daughter's school had been calling. And it turned out that my daughter had a plan to harm herself, which really stopped me in my tracks. I had no idea whatsoever that, things had gotten so dark. So we go to the school, we learn what we need to do next. And to turn a very long story into present, she had a plan to take her own life, and we had to walk through the mental illness arena completely unprepared. And for 5 years, we stumbled through the dark trying to figure that out. And really what it came down to was I also walked with mental illness, but I masked very, very well. And I had been hiding it. I had been ashamed of it. I had looked at it like a flaw. And so my daughter was doing the same thing. So we were making absolutely no progress because nothing was really changing. We just added a lot of doctors and medications and more things to our plate. And so what started change was me just accepting that I also walked with mental illness. And so I had to say to myself and the world, I walk with mental illness. I always have. It doesn't define me. It just means I need to learn how to walk with it. And so does my daughter. And so we went on what felt like a long journey. And we came out the other side. And once we did that, we decided we wanted to start a podcast kind of for our own healing journey, but also for people who were in the same boat, feeling the same thing, not to feel so alone. And so we started the Mother-Daughter Journey podcast, and things have just been progressing from there. We've been helping mothers and their teens communicate. I became a classroom behavioral specialist. So I work in a middle school classroom, helping them become more emotionally regulated and figuring out safer ways to communicate. And we both believe that's the name of the game. Honest conversations that are compassionate and productive really has the power to change generations.
First off, Kelly, let me honor you in this space and give you some rollers for courage. That's the first thing I have to do here because couple first here, I don't know if I've had anybody from Rhode Island on here. I don't think so. So, okay.
Nice.
Hey, Rhode Island, what's up? Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is that it's dual layered, right? Because here's this thing, my daughter is going through this thing with her, but then also this kind of other bridge of, hey, so have I. I don't know that I've had that level here. I've definitely have talked to parents that have had children actually go through with the act. and finish the act of that. I don't want to get into that because that becomes very
Right.
heavy for me, because I've had some very emotional interviews and dealing with the weight of that. And I've also too had parents who have walked that journey separate from their kids. So for this to be something for me to have here, I honor you. I know I've said it before, but I have to
Thank
say
you.
it because it's two different weights. Here's the weight of my journey, but then there's also the weight of my daughter's journey, which I'm here to help her navigate the space of life, right? That's
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah.
Let me start off by asking this question. This was not actually going to be my first question, but I think it's a great place to start. So, walking alongside Abigail's journey through mental illness, I think that's deeply personal, right? I want you to tell me, what did that teach you about presence versus fixing? I said that as a mother, not to the point to where, I'm saying that, oh, I'm dealing with the same things you are, but I've evolved to always jumping in to fix. Sometimes it says, what do you need to do now to be present in this situation? So I want to give the mic over to you to talk about that presence over fixing.
So that is a perfect segue, because we say this all the time. It's not about perfection or managing. It's about understanding and curiosity, really, and also taking out ego. So part of having honest conversations and being present is not inviting ego to the room, because in order to be able to hear what's coming out of your child's mouth, or really anybody's mouth that you're talking to, when you're having an uncomfortable conversation that's very, very personal, we instantly get defensive. And so we need to take ego out of it. We need to remove the I should have, I could have, I would have, and just be open in the conversation and let it unfold. We also need to be calm, so emotionally regulated going in. A lot of times with conversations with my daughter, as we were, morphing into what we are now, we would schedule difficult conversations so that we could be present, so that we weren't sideswiped, I would say, by the emotions that arose from saying, hey, I need to talk to you now, and this is what it's about, so let's sit down and do it. We scheduled an uncomfortable conversation so we could kind of prep ourselves and deal with the emotions before that, so we could be present for each other talking, rather than thinking of the response and, ooh, how can I fix it? So that was one tool that we used to be present.
Mm-hmm. That's good, because and then not necessarily with mother-son relationship, but just dealing with other relationships, that I do kind of fall into that. What is their response going to be?
Right.
Because I think I'm going to have to try to fix it. So thank you for putting that tool into my head, because it was something like instantly I was like, okay, there's probably a situation where, Sinead's trying to put this fixing hat on when that's not necessarily needed right now. But let's talk about this. How do you think that we balance? Because when you're dealing with mental illness, and I have my own battle, and here's my daughter, or maybe it's not even with my daughter. How do we balance honesty with compassion? I think there's sometimes we have to have, and I'm asking this because, like I said, this is reciprocity here. And when I was looking at your story, I was like, well, how do we keep this very honest, accountable, and how do we keep it compassionate when sometimes fear and frustration are kind of a part of the mix? How do we do that in a place that it still feels safe and we can still have relationships and conversations that are viable?
So I would say that first and foremost, they start with the conversations that you have with yourself. I would notice how you speak to yourself. Do you jump to judgment? Do you jump to trying to fix a problem instead of allowing yourself to feel it? Do you hold yourself accountable in a kind and compassionate way? Or are you kind of judging yourself and berating yourself for something you thought you could have or should have done better? So that's where it starts for me, being able to talk to myself in a compassionate and kind, productive way, which is really hard and it takes a lot of practice. But once you're able to do it with yourself, you really are able to do it with anybody, because you are confident in your own space and your own calm, because you've already done it with yourself. So that's really the first step. And then the second step is acknowledging the feelings in the room, acknowledge that it's an uncomfortable conversation, acknowledge that you love them, but there was still an expectation or some sort of accountability that they need to be held to. But conversations can be honest without being hurtful. And really, that's the key that we need to master.
Yeah, and that's a thin line that is kind of there, and people tend to cross it. And like once you cross it, it's so hard to, it's so hard to kind of fix it and make it feel okay, because once people feel hurt, that's an emotion that's tough to navigate. It's tough to come back and build trust. It's just really, really tough. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you talked about a little bit like when we first came in about your personal struggle in, with mental health. When did you know that this is what I'm experiencing? Did you know further early on that this is mental health, or did I just feel like a little bit different? When did that come about in your personal journey as to what is this?
Yeah, it really was with her journey. I struggled with it all my life. My mom walks with it as well, but it wasn't really labeled that, right? It was more labeled that you were like just too much, or you're difficult, or you're particular. There's just a lot of things that it gets labeled, or lazy because, depression comes in and you don't want to do things. So I didn't really realize my personal journey until a good 3 or 4 years in with Abigail. So she was a senior in high school when this all came out to play. And as I was meeting with therapists and psychiatrists to try to help her in what I at that time labeled as help fix the problem, I came to realize that all of the same things that she was walking through and saying, I mean, we both are diagnosed a little bit differently, but I had had all those same feelings of like self-loathing, of there's something wrong with me. I just can't show up the way people expect me or the way that is normal. And yeah, that's really when it started to unfold, when I was like, ooh, this is me. And I just like hide it really well with perfectionism and overachieving. And that was really hard. So that's when my therapy science shifted to, yeah, Kelly, it is, you do have these things too, and you do need to learn how to walk with them. And it was kind of like a realization for both of us together. And we really walked it together at that point. Once I acknowledged it, and I acknowledged it at my job first, things just unraveled from there. But that's when it unfolded.
I know it's tough, but it's something kind of beautiful about that, because had her situation maybe not escalated to that point, would you would have ever had that realization? You understand? Like sometimes when we're in the thinking of something, because it's just so much, like we don't really understand what's being unraveled and unveiled based on this very traumatic thing. Because you talking up to that point and saying like it wasn't until that point. I'm like, well, gosh, like if that had not had happened, would you have toyed with that for maybe another decade or ever? It's just one of those things. So wow,
forever maybe.
Yeah,
forever maybe.
Sure. And that's what I was thinking. Oh my gosh, like I really hate that, Kelly and her daughter Abigail has experienced that. But man, I'm really grateful for what came out of that. And I think that was the most powerful part. That's why I had to have you play that back so I can understand that in our conversation. So let me ask you this. How do you think, or why do you think generational cycles like quietly repeat themselves? Even we want the best. And when I'm putting my best foot forward, Kelly, I'm telling you this from a most transparent place. I'm like, I know there's some things in my family that I would not jump on my son. I'm trying to do the best thing that I know how to do. But why or how do you think generational cycles still kind of come up, even though we want the best for our loved ones and offsprings?
Yeah, I would say modeling instead of managing is a tool that I use for myself. So I model the behavior that I want to see out of them, or the behavior that's so difficult, right? And by doing that, instead of telling, they're watching. So, and that really goes across the board. It happens in your job. It happens in your home life. It happens with every relationship. You know the things that you want to change. And instead of again, talking to yourself and berating yourself for those things, you just keep honestly working on them. Just keep honestly modeling the behavior that you want changed. So if we're quick to say anger or quick to use words, which is something that I always, excuse me, I always did, I modeled repair. Like, oh, wow, that was really hurtful. I didn't mean to react that way. Mom makes mistakes too. I'm really sorry. And repair it and acknowledge and take accountability for your actions too. A lot of times we're looking at our children or just other people at the things that they're doing, and we're like, oh, why can't they take accountability? Why can't they take accountability? We really weren't shown how to do that. We weren't. We were shown to respect our mothers and our fathers. We were, be the good girls, don't say things. And so we really weren't shown how to live large, make mistakes, apologize, repair, and just think for ourselves and model our own differences in the way we want to change things.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think even as someone, I think everybody, look, if we're honest, everybody got some type of mental stress.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be honest with, because everybody's always like this stigma of like whatever. And I'm thinking honest, I'm like, okay, like I am too mentally stimulated for this. I will draw the line with them in a quick second, kill it. I won't think twice about it, because I'm not going to go through these mind cycles with you and different things. Another thing about that segment is that I have evolved to a place to where you just said that, why I want to do this. We, hold them accountable for this, and they were not taught to do that. I've learned to take the titles off of people: mom, dad, brother, sister, principal. Remove all of that. Let's look at them as a person, because you think because the person may have the title that they should be equipped with the things that may typically fall under that title description. So I have learned to say, well, look, I don't care if this person is 65 or 75. What does age have to do with it when they were never given a roadmap on how to express these feelings? When they
Exactly.
So I think that was very powerful in saying that, especially if you're maybe on the other end of someone who has a mental health crisis or dealing with mental health, and you're trying to hold them just so accountable, you should have done it. That's where the piece of education comes, because there could be something that they're not equipped to do. It'll be like, okay, let me go get this newborn. Go in there and bake me a 3-layer chocolate cake. I want extra frosting, and you give them all these. And it's a newborn in the cradle.
Right.
What the newborn do? The newborn can't go to the store and get the flour and the butter, the eggs.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that was powerful, and definitely something to think about when we talk about, especially mental health. And there's so many people that are in mental health crises. And I do mean crisis, and they don't even know it. They're masking it with other things. Yep. Everybody else's delusion, they're not even owning that, when it's really something that you can afford not to own, so that you can get the proper help that you need to navigate these spaces a little bit better. I want to ask you this, because it kind of is a great segue to about self-acceptance. This is a big one, because in families that are historically rigid, families that have lack of exposure, families that have lack of resources sometimes.
Yep.
You understand me?
I do.
It's self-acceptance is hard for a person, because historically everything around me is just so rigid. So for someone that may be in a rigid situation, what would you tell them that self-acceptance look like? Because everybody else doesn't accept this. Everything else is so rigid. What does self-acceptance look like in an environment that's so rigid?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. And that was my environment growing up. So, and as I said earlier in the segue, I could have gone for years, or maybe never looking at this, or even realizing that it was self-acceptance that was the problem, like not being able to accept myself because I felt like nobody else around me did. And honestly, for me, it was the fact that those generational cycles had to change for my child. I don't know if I ever would have had the strength to change them for myself. So if you're in that rigid situation, I would say use your own mind, which is really, really difficult. But try to look at yourself through your own eyes before you start looking through yourself through others, through others' eyes around you, especially if it's very rigid and you feel like they're not seeing you. If they actually could just see you or actually take the time to get to know you, they would realize that you weren't trying to either make them unhappy or make them upset. If you have those kind of feelings, or just, I'm not okay, I'm not a good person, try to take a step and see yourself outside of everybody else's eyes. And without the resources, yes, that's very difficult. I often wish that we could just say everybody has one person in the world that could model that kind of behavior for them. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. But we do have, like, all our kids are on YouTube, right? And there are things out there, there are positive influences that you can find. And it's not just kids, it's adults too. It's kind of accepting that you are responsible for the way that you feel. And once you can acknowledge that you are responsible, then you can start looking at the things that you're judging and say, am I judging them with my eyes or somebody else's? And that sounds, when you're talking to somebody who's really struggling, like, oh, sure, that's easier said than done. But the more you look yourself in the eye in the mirror and question those things and say, is this my expectation, or am I taking on somebody else's expectation of what I should be? Little by little by little, that does make a difference.
Sure. And it is those baby steps. And I've probably said this a few times today, but one of the things I'm most grateful for, I'm in this stage, really is this podcast. Because why? I get so many different perceptions. I get so many different experiences. I couldn't have learned any of this in books. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, yes, there's a level of it that you can definitely read and enhance your people, but it will never have the same weight as the stories of people who have lived them. So right. For me, being able to hear these types of stories, I really do walk this world a little bit lighter. I'm really, able to have conversations with really, girl, Kelly, all kinds. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like all kinds of people, because I think that people believe that their norm is everyone else's norm.
Yes.
And that's one of the biggest things I have to break when I'm out working. I remember when I was managing teams back in corporate America, that was one of the biggest. They was like, well, what was one of the biggest things you took away? I was like, it was that. It was breaking down these walls of norms for people that thought that their norm was sometimes even superior. I said, that's what you learn. And maybe it had some good, and maybe it governed you accordingly to get to where you are, but that's not superior to someone else's norm.
Right.
I think understand that and putting those little deposits in every day is really what makes this human experience that much greater. And most people never really get to that point. I want to ask you this, because I think what you do in terms of communication style it's more than just like surface level stuff. I say, well, yeah, I can be a good communicator like out there in the world, but I'm a much deeper communicator than that. Tell me how your strategy is different, because there's something about the way that you're connecting communication styles and just really facilitating conversation that's different than that surface level stuff they may teach you in public speaking and other places.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing any shade, okay? But I'm just being honest. Tell me because I feel that difference. Tell me what that difference is, and really some of the transformation you're seeing kind of because of that difference.
Yeah. So I'm lucky in the respect that I work with my daughter. The two of us work together. So we're able to bring the perspective when we're talking about working with families from the child and the parent, right? We can look at through each other's eyes, and we can help the parent and child do that. But we say, as far as first talking about communication, everybody has the surface level, right? We all have a style that we like to give and receive information in. Some of us are drivers, like, just give me the point, please. Stop asking me how my day was. And others are very personal. They don't want you to rush right to the point. So right there out of the gates, there can be already a communication barrier. But beyond that, is all the things you're bringing to a conversation, which I like to call conversational baggage. You're bringing generational beliefs, societal beliefs, your own perceptions of the things that you've gone through, religion, spiritual, there's just so much baggage that you bring to a conversation if you haven't worked through your own stuff. And so you're hearing things and that you're reacting to them, and you're not even reacting to what they're being said. You're reacting to a belief or a societal norm that's been pushed onto you, or a generational pattern, or a family norm. Any of those things, they all come into our conversations. And so when you're having these conversations and you're feeling offended, or you can feel that your feathers are getting a little ruffled, take the pause, time out in the conversation. I mean, we even say sometimes have a safe word. If you know that you're about to go into a conversation and you're going to start saying stuff to get it to end because you're emotionally heightened, or you're going to say things just to hurt because you don't know what else to say, use the safe word, stop the conversation, take a step back and cool off and look at what baggage maybe brought you to that emotional state. Was it really what they were saying? And then another key thing that we use is, if you are at that point and you can't get out of the conversation, take a breath and say, this is what I heard. Is that what you meant to say? Because a lot of times we're perceiving what somebody's saying, again, through our own baggage, through our own lens and our own experiences. And that isn't what's coming out of their mouth at all.
I love that stepping away, because sometimes, people say, don't add fuel to the fire, right?
Yeah.
That's one of those situations. I mean, you study like nabbing it, like you just take a break and kind of regroup. And I've noticed that sometimes, like even in like, family arguments, like different things, it's like, please just take a break. And that's kind of like reconvene, because we've gotten to a certain level right now to where it's just so heightened. Everyone is just so highly emotional. And so much of this stuff is being fueled through the emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times facts and stuff are going out the window. It's just pure emotion that, that people are fighting with. And I really think that stepping away is really powerful. But everyone's in the fight trying to prove their point and do these different things. But if we can kind of please just be quiet for a minute, okay? Just please.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And come back and reconvene, we can get so much further faster. So I think that's a great tip. Now, Kelly, I want to make sure, because I love the name of the course. It's Honoring Family Voices.
Honoring Family Voices, yes.
Yeah, that's I like it. I like the name of that. I want you to tell me about that course, and just give us kind of the overarching goals of that course, and like what are you hoping that people walk away from it, and also to tell us about the structure. Is this like a weekly course? Is it like a self-paced? Just give us kind of about how it's structured and those overarching goals.
So the course is structured. It's 3 different parts. And the first part is that very surface level part where we talk about, what is your conversation style? How do you recognize the conversation styles in other people? How do they like to give and receive information? The second portion of it is your relationship with self, and how do you talk to yourself? Because people listen to the way you talk to yourself. I remember a time when I used to say, if I didn't call my mom every day, and if I'd forget to call her, oh, I'm such a horrible daughter. I didn't call my mother today. Well, one of my daughters held on to that one statement for so long, thinking if she doesn't check in with me every single day, she's not a good daughter. And so having conversations the way that you talk to yourself, because it's being watched, is really the second step, without ego, without judgment. We're just putting on our observational lens, and we're observing our emotions, where they're coming from, our actions, our behaviors, and we're learning how to talk to ourselves. So when we do make a mistake or we do something that we're not happy with, it's not like, ooh, you did, why? We're not shitting ourselves all the time. We're talking to ourselves compassionately and learning how to do that. And that takes a lot of practice. And then the third part of the course is looking at the conversational baggage. It's looking at where all of that came from, and the tools of scheduling conversations, safe words, taking a break, the pause, all of that. It's just what to do when you're really in the midst of like conflict and having hard conversations and you're trying to change that pattern.
That's really good. When you were talking about like, this is gotta be hard coded in like curriculum, like actual curriculum, like in schools and universities. It needs to be hard coded, and I do mean this. I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to see like, how to plug and play. But it needs to be really in those particular spaces. And I want to ask you, from your perspective, why do you think? Because I see why, but why do you think that piece of work is needed so much in colleges and universities and schools today? Because I definitely don't need, because that's the first place my mind went. When you started talking, I'm like, oh, they need to be teaching at these kids' schools because it's so important. I wanted to get your take on that because it's such a place now. The schools and universities, it's just so delicate now. And it breaks my heart, honestly. I don't want to talk about this. It breaks my heart, the state that many of these schools and universities are. You never thought that schools of all places will be in the state that it is now.
Yes.
But I want to talk about why that work is needed more than ever in schools and universities, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think because, as I stated before, right, our parents and even ourselves as parents right now, we're just kind of realizing these things and working it out. Not every single parent in every single household and every single situation for each child that's in our schools or in our universities is the same. And we don't have these skills. Some of us have learned them, but for the most part, I would say we don't have them. And if you take a look at the state of our world, where you're just talking about the universities and where they're at and our leadership in general, getting these tools into our kids' hands, our future leaders that are going to be out there dealing with all the problems that we have been creating with our lack of knowledge on this, is really what I feel is a huge portion of positive change and moving forward with a more peaceful, positive, emotionally regulated world. If our kids can learn how to do this within our schools and our universities, because we know it's not going to go across every single family, then they can take that with them with their specialities. Because knowing how to do this and communicate and have compassionate conversations and not jump to the emotion and the reaction and, I need to fix you, in my mind, is really how we start moving forward, walking forward in a new path that I feel like we all really would like to see.
Yes, that is really, really good. My son, he's homeschooled, but we do a lot of community different things with other homeschools in the area and different things. And one of the things that I really, really can admire about it is that we go to a library pretty much every Wednesday, and they have a large group of kids that are there. And one of the things they do is they give them these scenarios of like tough situations, and they go around the room and they ask these kids, how they would react. And then they let them, the ones that kind of are at opposition as to how they react, they let them talk it out. And says, I would do it this way. And I thought that was like so powerful. I was like, that would have been so helpful for me. Even as a child, growing up way back when. Now, we're not going to say when, but what it's so helpful for me to do that, because what happens is that, like, when you get into places like workplaces, you have a hard time, falling under someone else's opinion. Meaning you think that their opinion is right because you don't know how to really truly voice yours, and you can't hold emotional safe space for what they may be saying. But there's a lot of different ways that these things show up that ripple beyond these, conversations that are around the kitchen table or, in a session. I'm always trying to be present to make sure that these decisions and conversations are going to ripple in a positive way in the community, especially as it relates to my son. Guess what, Kelly? He's not just my son. One day you're going to be somebody's team member, maybe somebody's spouse, maybe somebody's dad. I don't know. He's not just my son. And I say that, and I love him, but he's not just my son. And I don't ever want to create a situation to where I am not being intentional about what goes out and producing to the community, because I'm not the end all be all for him. That's just not how life works. I wanted to make sure I introduced that school question. I also want to make sure you tell us more. I know you already talked about the podcast, but I want a clean section here for connection points. But in that, I want you to tell us about the podcast again, where to find it, and all the other places to find Kelly out in the social media or website world?
Perfect. Yeah, the podcast is the Mother-Daughter Journey, and it's streaming in all the places that you would find podcasts. So Spotify, Amazon, Apple, all of those places. We are in our third season this year. And then you can find me, the Mother-Daughter Journey Facebook page. Also, Kelly White Speaks is my personal Facebook page, but I put a lot of stuff there. And LinkedIn. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, so you definitely can find me there. I've also recently did a talk called, it's the When Stories, and it's called Breaking Cycles Through Honest Conversation, and that is on YouTube that you can see. And so, yeah, those are the places that you can find me. Oh, sorry. You can also email me at kelly@themotherdaughterjourney.com.
Okay, and just depending on where you're watching it, we'll have all of those things in the description box, either, of course, above or below, depending on your viewing platform. Let me say this, I know I've said it before, but I really, really like this story and this segment because I've been able to kind of have that two lens, and the fact that you and your daughter have agreed to come together and say, let's share this and let's go out in the world and tell it. That is nothing small. Because not only do you guys both have your own journeys as it relates to mental health, you have both agreed to come forth together and create a message. So maybe it's become like what you do, every day. It's our podcast, our third season, but I don't ever want you to walk away and think that that's like something small, because there's something huge that you guys are both together attacking this from a different front. And then there's that generational level that it's different, right? You grew up in a different generation as it relates to mental health. Your daughter's in a whole entire other generation as it relates to mental health. So having those conversations open, it just widens the, perspective that you guys can put out, because people can see it from different vantage points, but from two people who have had to share the space with it. So I think it's absolutely beautiful. Now, this is the part in our show, Kelly, where I cue to my guests for final thoughts. I asked them to give us some great parting words for this space and really something that captures the essence of Kelly White. After final thoughts, I'll be back to close the show.
Thank you. Final thoughts. My final thought is that we need to be cognizant of the ripples that we put out into the world. And I like to say that at the beginning, when Abigail and I were really struggling and masking and working through this, we put jagged ripples out into the world. It was negative energy, and everyone around us felt it. And as we've changed and we've learned not to judge ourselves and be compassionate and honest with our emotions and our feelings, those ripples that we send out into the world are now positive and smooth, and we can see the change that it's making in our community and the people around us. And so that's something that I always like to keep in mind, and I'd like other people to keep in mind. It's, as you said, he's not just your son, and we don't live in a vacuum. We affect the world with the way that we are. And so, be aware of what kind of ripples you're spreading.
Absolutely. So to everyone out there in the Her Voice Shines podcast land, I tell you guys, miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. I will always stand by that. We always hope that these podcasts are enriching. I take this as a very serious place. All of these stories literally changed my life. I tell people I could never, like I said, I could never learn this in a book. I could never have lived this experience with you, Kelly. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And like the church folks say, I love y'all out there. Ain't nothing you can do about it. So take my love and know that it's true. And we'll be back really in no time with another amazing woman here on the Her Voice Shines podcast. Until then, we are out. But we love you. Thank you so much.